Welcome to episode 44 of Let's Talk Money with Wendy Silibi. I'm super excited this morning to welcome Uzanele Njapa, the unlearning lady. I've been wanting to meet her for a very long time. And of course, today is that day. So I've got in my hand her journal, which is called the 90-Day Unlearning Journal, which talks really about letting go of old patterns and creating new ones in just 90 days. So we're going to have a good conversation with Zanele, and I'm hoping that at the end of this episode, you'll embark on a journey as well to transform and change yourself to being a better person. Welcome, Zanele.
Thank you so much for having me, Ma.
Yeah.
It's a pleasure.
Hey, I am very happy to have you. You know, like I was saying to you before we went live, Guti, I've heard you so many times talking about change, about unlearning and learning. And, you know, when I first saw you the first time, it didn't click until sometime this weekend. I'm like, yo, that's the person I want to talk to, you know. So I'm going to ask you just to introduce yourself, tell us who you are, what you do, and just highlight anything that you want, you know, people to know about you.
Thank you so much. It's just truly such an honor to be with you today and to be having this conversation. So my name is Zanele Njapa, and I'm the CEO and founder of a company called the Unlearners. And basically what we do at the Unlearners is exactly that. We support both individuals and organizations to unlearn the way that things have always been done. Research shows that we're thinking 90% of the same thoughts. So our work at the Unlearners is to bring that awareness to life for individuals, for organizations that have been feeling stuck in business as usual, and then really supporting them to move into a space where they can challenge those mindsets, challenge those perspectives, and then jump into what's next. So it really is just that exciting journey of challenging the status quo, re-looking at what we always thought worked and what served us to get to certain points, and then going, okay, so how do I change this? Because now it's actually become a noose around my neck that's actually holding me back from moving forward, even though it's worked really well in the past. So that's pretty much what we do. And I myself am author of the 90-Day Unlearning Journal. I've contributed to Forbes a few times. I am an award-winning businesswoman. And yeah, just living my best life, I think.
Yay, we are in good company this morning. I mean, Forbes. Clock it. The young people say that, you know. But I was listening to one of your podcasts during the week, and I was surprised to find out that you used to be a teacher. How did we get here? And what did that pivot look like for you? And what did it take you to change from being a teacher to being a businesswoman?
Goodness, it was one of the biggest shifts, I think, in my life that I've ever encountered and ever gone through, really, as an individual. And I had the kind of upbringing where being a teacher was already part of who I am. I like to say that even now in the work that I do, I'm still a teacher in a very real way. So I was one of those children who I would I've got two younger brothers, they're twins. I would close my younger brothers in our spare room, and I would create worksheets for them, and then I'd walk up and down our passageway at home with a cup of tea, because I saw you have to have a cup of tea, otherwise you're not a teacher.
Yeah.
And so I would walk up and down with a cup of tea, and I would teach them. And so by the time it got to a point where I needed to choose a career path, it made sense because it was just who I am. And so I taught for about 3 years. Until I got to a point where I realized that the way that the education system was set up and various other things, it was very administrative. And so as much as I wanted to teach and spend time with the children and really support them on their journeys, what was happening a lot of the time was there was all of this admin that was taking up so much time. And it was very repetitive. There's very little room in the way that the education system is set up, at least at the time, for creativity, for innovation, for exploration. And so I then decided to make a transition. And the way that I made my transition is I asked myself, if I think about the skills and expertise that I have, what is a space and who is an audience or a market that could use or benefit from these skills? And so that's where I went to. I joined an association called the Professional Speakers Association. And that year they had a competition called the Professional, it's called Speaker Factor, actually, excuse me. It's called the Speaker Factor competition. And I was still living in Durban at the time. I entered it and I won by default at the time because the guy who was supposed to compete against me didn't even show up. So they just ushered me through. They were like, go to nationals, you're the only one.
Wow.
And then I won the competition. And part of it was that you get mentored by some of the best speakers in the country. And then the rest, I guess, is just pretty much history. Yeah.
Sure.
I left my teaching job in 2019, started doing this full time, 2020.
This is awesome. Hey, how you can just pivot like that, And yeah, I also don't like a lot of administration. And so I can actually, resonate with what you're saying. So growing up at home with your brothers and with your parents, what are some of the money scripts that you learned as a child? I mean, I'm trying to get, Uti, what was your relationship with money? What inspired you or motivated you? Or what do you know about money that you learned, when you were still young?
I love that question. And it's such an interesting one because there are really two key ways that we learn. We learn through things that are outrightly spoken and written, but we also learn through modeling, right? And for me, there was so much that I learned about money, not because my parents ever sat me down and said, okay, Zanele, this is how you budget, this is what everything costs, here's the reason why we can't afford that toy. None of that. It was all modeled through the way that they acted around money, but also the things that they did every now and again say. So if I think about specific scripts that at the time were predominantly said, I mean, we would have things like, no, we can't afford that. You're not other children. Because often the conversation we like to have with our parents is, but Usane has that thing. Why can't I have it? It's you're not her. You don't live under her parents' roof. This is your home. And I think that those consistent conversations, that's not who you are, that's not the, we can't afford that. But also I had to speak then to modeling. I had the kind of mom who worked really hard. My mom was a leave first thing in the morning, back last thing at the end of the day kind of woman. Worked so hard. She was the person who would always give us the, if we were going on a school trip, we would always go to Mom, can we at least just, can you buy this? Here's the list, here's the stationery list. She was always that person. And so the indirect script that I got from that is money is tight. But also money needs to be handled very cautiously. It's not something you just come by every now and again. It's something that you have to be very intentional around. You have to be strategic around, but also it's scarce and it's not there. Because every single time I would ask for things that would put me toe to toe with all of the other kids at school, I wouldn't have it. I would be the one where I'd get to school and I'd see all the other kids wearing the brand name shoes, and I would have the brand adjacent. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah,
but
it does. It does.
yeah. I would have the other ones that had the 2 lines and not the 3 lines. And oh man, it was such a triggering conversation. But yeah, and what that does is it does something very, very real to the child's psyche at the time, because it teaches you what you can have and what you can't have, but what you deserve and what you don't deserve.
Yeah. And just from those money script, I mean, what was your relationship with money? Because we have these money personalities that are shaped by what we have seen, what we have experienced, and what we have heard. And they either work to our advantage or to our disadvantage. So I want to know how that shaped your relationship with money. And while you are at it, if you can share with us if you did make any money mistakes and what you learned from them.
Oh, so many money mistakes. We could sit here all day over a cup of tea, because I like tea, and talk all about those money mistakes. So if I think specifically about my relationship with money and how it was impacted by that, I became what's called in the sacred money archetypes framework an accumulator. I would hoard, I'm a minimalist hoarder, and still very much to this day, there are still remnants of that in my life. And so because I was brought up to think that money isn't something you easily come by, so when I have it, I need to make sure that I keep all of it nice and close. And then if someone says, Zanele, can I? I'm like, no, not right now. Even though, and I would be the kind of person who would sit with a savings account, 6 figures savings account that's, I'm just like, but but I still feel like I don't have. Even though there was, there was some presence there, but for me, it was I could lose it anytime. And who knows, something could come and it could completely take this away from me. So there was always a lot of that. And I saw it happen because even in my teaching days, I would always be in bad debt of some kind because my relationship with debt has definitely changed over time. But at the time, things I couldn't afford, credit cards, all sorts of other things that now I'd have very different relationship with, but I was always living on the edge of my comfort. I always had more month than money at the end of the month, and always just thinking about, okay, what now? What can I do? How can I borrow from Peter to pay Paul? And so when it comes to specific money mistakes that I can think of right now that might be worth thinking about is when during my years in, I remember this, when I started working then as a speaker, one of the things that I got confronted with as a result of working with my mentor who was very well established was being able to charge a speaking fee that was a lot more than what I, at the time, as a teacher was earning. And I will never forget getting the biggest shock of my life that when I keynoted, I could earn more than double what I was getting as a teacher for a month. No way. There was just no way. And because I already carried that idea and that mentality, it would affect how I would pitch myself. And so what would happen is that I would come into a conversation with a client and say, my fee is this, but it's okay if you don't have budget. I would always have a caveat because I was making room for this version of myself that I actually was, even though physically I was being invited to step into a new version of myself.
You remind me of me in some instances because, I used to do that a lot, And maybe at what point did you realize that you need to change? Change the way you engage with money, change the way that you engage with your clients, So I think I just want to understand what made you to change. At what point did you realize I need to change? Because change is hard, right?
Very, very, very challenging. For me, I think one of the moments that encouraged me to change was my sister became, and she doesn't know I'm going to tell the story, but my sister became almost like a bank of some kind. So if I was running short, I'd always go, oh, just one more month, I'm going to be okay. Just help me out a little bit. And understanding that I was consistently doing that and watching the impact it was possibly having on our relationship would really, really weigh on me. Because what starts to happen is the thing with money is that it's so intricately woven into our relationships and in ways we often can't see. And that was one of the things that for me started to happen because if it wasn't my mom, it was my sister. If it wasn't them, it was someone else.
Sure.
And relationships start to get strained in those contexts. And so that was, I think, just having that consistently happening and her just always being there and saying yes it's weird because it could have been a reason to go, oh, okay, I'm going to be fine because she's there. But it also was the reason why I went, no. No, I mean, she's going to start her own family very soon and have her own kids. You can't be an additional dependent on her. And so just understanding that was one of the reasons that had me going, no, it can't keep going on this way. Yeah. It needs to stop because you need to be able to count on you and your capacity. Yeah.
Sure. I'm glad that you came to that realization that you needed to do something different because I want to believe that, I'm that personality that your sister is that helps and helps and helps and never knows when to stop, and they always say, take us. Don't know when to stop. They will forever be coming. So I think for me, the fact that you then came to that realization that, you know what, I need to stop and I need to do something different, that's amazing. Hey? Yeah. And I mean, when we talk about money, there's a manual that I wrote, and one of the things that we spoke about is that one of the things that especially people in my age group, or we are the baby boomers. Our parents never used to speak about money. We were not taught about money at school. And one of the things that I know was a shortcoming for us is that, first we would work, earn the money, spend the money, thereafter learn about money. And actually, the process should be you learn about money, spend money. It should be the other way around. And that's why I found this journal so empowering for me, that it gives you that opportunity to change what has been going wrong. And I want to encourage anyone that's watching, that's going through, whether it's your finances or your personal life or any other area, you can unlearn the wrong things that you learned over a while, and you can change them. So people like holding on to, but we've been doing it this way. I mean, why should we change? Why should we change what's working? And now you are saying, and normally people say it takes 21 days to learn a new habit, but Lana Bati 90 days. So maybe let's just talk about change. Why is it so hard to change? Why do we hold on to the things that we've always known, and how does it impact us negatively?
Sure. Oh my goodness, that is such a good question. So I'll start it off really, really quickly with a tiny story that I think will outline the points. Then we'll talk a little bit to the research and then to the journal. So there was this traveler was walking through a forest, completely lost, walking through this forest. All of these twigs and branches were hitting them on the face, and walking through the forest, and didn't know where they were going. And then they came out of the forest, and they got to this huge body of water. And they went, okay, so now I've moved through the forest. Now I need to get through this water to somehow find safety. And they didn't know how they were going to get through the water, so they created some kind of a ship, or some kind of a small raft. And they took some twigs and branches and everything else from the trees behind them. They created this raft, and then they crossed the water successfully. And then they got to the end of the water, to the next part of their journey, which was a forest. And they looked at this raft that they had built that had gotten them through this hard time. And they went, okay, raft, I don't know when I'm going to need you again. So what I'm going to do, raft, is I'm going to strap you to my back and then just keep walking with you, because you never know, right? Life is like that. And now the next part was once again a thick forest. But what was happening as they were moving through this forest is that it was so tight to get through, and they had to keep maneuvering so that the raft could get through. And what was now starting to happen is that the very thing that had served them well before on the water was now the very thing that was holding them back.
Yeah.
And so the reason why change becomes really hard for us is because of that loss factor. If you think about, for example, the idea around the loss aversion theory, you and I would much rather avoid any kind of loss as opposed to lean into some kind of a win. So it becomes a conversation of, oh my goodness, I'm going to lose who I used to be. I used to define myself as that person, or I'm going to lose the respect of my colleagues, or I'm going to lose this and that. The other side of it also is the sunken cost theory, is because when you have invested so much in being that person, and when it comes to organization, we invest so much in business as usual. We invest teams, we invest systems, we invest tech that is all centered around making this version of us work. And now all of a sudden you're saying, we need to lose this and we need to stop this. Yeah. And so there's an idea of, I'd much rather continue with the thing that's worked as opposed to lose or have a sinking cost in some sense. Now, to go over to the journal, it's a very funny story, because what a lot of us don't realize is that this idea of the 21 days around a habit is actually misplaced research. It actually came from plastic surgery insights that were taken out of context.
Oh my Lord.
It's got nothing to do with the actual creation of a habit and a behavior. The
Really?
very first place that was published is by a plastic surgery a plastic surgeon who created this research as to how long it takes for an individual to get used to their new nose or their new foot or whatever it is. And so what we did is we took it out of context and we used it for habit creation, which is actually not the case.
Yeah.
What we know from spaced repetition theory is that if you want to learn something and use it over time, it's going to take a lot more than that. Habits don't actually at the level of the brain completely die, because when a stimulus presents itself, you still need to make a choice. Think about someone who has stopped smoking. Every now and again, even though it's been, let's say, for example, 90 days, when they are in the presence of others, it literally the only way you know that you've built a new habit is when your default is different, not when it's completely silent, not when the option is not there, because it will always be the case. It's just about what is your new default now. When I'm sitting there, other people are smoking, my default is not to. Not that there isn't a desire to do it, but it's just that I've now almost shifted the balance from one default choice to another. And that's pretty much it. And so what happens with the 90-day unlearning journal is it's split in those 3 days, but it encourages you to continue well above that 90 days, but also not fall into the trap of thinking, oh, it's been a month. Oh, I feel new. And then, you sort of jump off the wagon.
Yeah.
But you want to keep it going, and that's why it's split into those 3 different parts as well.
Wow. I must say the 21-day thing, I've used it a lot. And I'm glad that today you've, told me that this thing is not, it was taken out of context, and there's so many other things that we take out of context that we use, and I always tell people about how this scripture that says the love of money, actually the excessive love of money is the root of all evil. And isn't it that people take it out of context and say money is the root of all evil? And you can find yourself avoiding money throughout your life because of something that was taken out of context. So now you know that it does not take 21 days to change a habit. It takes much more than that. And so I want us to go into this journal. Sure. When I went through your journal, the quotes there, they were speaking to my heart. But there's this one that I like, and I want people to buy the journal. So we're really not going to unpack everything that's in here, but I like the one by Alvin Toffler. It says the illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read and write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. And I mean, as the unlearning lady, I just thought this was so powerful. And I really would like us to maybe chat around, the 3 elements that you have in the book. And don't give out everything. Sure. Just I want us to whet their appetite. After this, they must go get this journal, right? I mean, you talk about the mirror, and you talk about the harvest, and you talk about the rewrite. And so I want you to just take us through when I'm trying to change how the mirror, the harvest and the rewrite plays its role. So, yeah.
Definitely. So another way to think about mirror, harvest, rewrite is learn, unlearn, relearn. Yes. So if you want different language, that's a language that's used in the journal, but if you want different language, that's also another way to think about it. So if we look at the mirror part of the journal, which is the first 28 days in the journal, that is the point at which you almost literally stand in front of the mirror and get to see yourself clearly. If you want to think about it as those 4 different levels of learning or education, it's when you move from unconscious incompetence, so not knowing what you don't know, to conscious incompetence. So understanding, oh my goodness, wait a minute. Someone said to me once, I'm doing the journal as a 90-day journey with a group of women in a fantastic corporate organization. And she said to me, Zanele, this journal should have come with a box of tissues. And I thought, I like that. We should have unlearning branded tissues to go with
because when you look in the mirror, you really see who is in that mirror. You know, Michael Jackson said, must look in that mirror.
Yeah, starting with the man in the mirror. That's it. So that's the mirror phase. It's the point at which you start to realize that there are mindsets, there are patterns, there are perspectives that you have been protecting, that you are holding or you've got on your back that are actually rocks that need to be put down.
Right.
And the beautiful thing about the mirror phase is it's a judgment-free zone. But it's curiosity led. So it's the point at which you go, oh, that's interesting. Oh, I didn't. Oh, wow. Okay, that's pretty much all that's happening there. For those first few days, just building that understanding,
And I guess you must be willing to look in that mirror and to acknowledge that these are the things that are happening and they're probably holding you back and want to continue.
Correct. Yes. There has to be a willingness because without that, like you say so beautifully, Ma, without that awareness and that curiosity and openness, you will always then just gravitate towards shame, towards guilt. But if you lead with curiosity and just the desire for insight and to better understand self, you then start to realize, one, a lot of the mindsets that I'm carrying are not mine. A lot of the perspectives I'm carrying are not mine. Not mine in the sense that, one, I inherited them from dad, from granny, from my teacher at school, or I'm still carrying them from a past version of myself. And
that's what you can do actually with money as well. Look in the mirror and see what mindsets am I carrying that are not mine, that are holding me back, acknowledge them, and then move to the next phase.
Yes. And so the next phase then from there, so we start with mirror, then we go to harvest. And harvest is now where you start actually asking the questions of yourself and creating that beautiful link between the two. It's almost, if you think about William Bridges' model from managing transitions, that, you've got the letting go, you've got the neutral zone, and then you've got the grabbing hold. This is now the neutral zone of your change journey. This is the point where you're no longer who you were, but you're also not who you're becoming. But this is the hardest point of the journey because there's that uncertainty. The uncertainty is increased. So at this point then you are asking deeper questions around those insights, but you are making the links for yourself between where they might have come from, how you felt about them. So you're processing a lot of that emotional stuff. What was the core memory that's attached to it? So for example, if I think about my money, I've got a core memory of being in a grade 1 classroom where children are passing sausage rolls and I don't have money to buy a sausage roll. And that for me anchored this idea that I don't have and I don't deserve, but I'm also not the kind of person who has. And so you move then from harvest to now my favorite part, which is the very last one, which is rewrite. And now you get to say, okay, I have built up all of this insights and understanding because education and learning and insights is not enough. It doesn't, otherwise you and I, because of the podcast we watch, we would be very different people. But it's not enough to just get the insight. You now need to practice. That's the next part of it. And so that's where rewrite comes in. It's to say, using all these insights that you've now gotten about who you are and where it's all come from and what your patterns are, how do we build the habit infrastructure in your day-to-day environment? So everything from triggers in your environment to shifting who you surround yourself with, making sure you bring in the right people to have conversations with. Are you surrounding yourself with the right masterminds, coaching groups, all of those things that then support habit creation? So those are the three phases: mirror, rewrite, harvest, or learn, unlearn, relearn.
Sure. That is awesome. Hey, and I was looking at this and I was thinking, I was looking at my own personal journey in terms of when I went on retirement, because there were certain things that I had been doing that I had learned over the years. For example, with money, when you're employed, it's easy, you are guaranteed on the 20th, your salary is coming in, and you are guaranteed for a very long time. So you can go out there, spend your money anyhow, on anything, with anyone, anywhere, and you really don't think about those things. So when I went on retirement, I had to pause, and say, things are no longer the same. The income is ceasing. what do I have to do that is different? And I must say, it was not an easy road. It still is not, you know, but what was powerful is the awareness piece, you know, that I became aware that something is ending, and so something needs to change. So even if you want to hold on to what you were used to doing, you are forced actually to change. But other people don't change, by the way. They continue in the same trajectory. But I think for me, when I was going through this journal, by the way, I'm now going to start doing the 90-day process, because there's quite a number of things that I need to change. And I looked in the mirror and I was like, okay, Wendy, you need to change quite a few things. And I'm so excited that I get the opportunity to do this with this journal. So as we wrap up, is there anything that you want to voice over, maybe that I didn't ask, that you think is important for those who are watching us regarding the unlearning, a process? And then we will be wrapping up.
I think the most important thing that I think might be really, really worth people understanding and knowing is the reason why it becomes important to unlearn. And we all I often say, you know, it's time to unlearn when it feels like you've been going in a spiral. And it feels like, no, but I've done this before. No, but I've learned this lesson. No, but this was the same as the other relationship. No, but last month with my money as well. That is the moment where you know that there is an almost underlying dictator that's making your decisions for you. Whether it's you as a 3-year-old girl, or it's granny and the things that she said, there is something that's making your decisions for you. And that's why you're finding yourself in that spiral. And the reason why unlearning is not roses and butterflies, it's hard work, is because those are deeply rooted systems that if you don't actually address them and come face to face, like you were beautifully saying with the mirror, come face to face with them, you're going to find yourself in a position where every single month looks the same, every single relationship looks the same, every single career looks the same, and then you'll get to a point where you're lying on your trigger warning on your deathbed and going, oh, wow, it's like I didn't live 60 beautiful years. I lived 20 years 3 times over, and was just the same person over and over again.
Wow. Thank you so much for those pearls of wisdom. And I'm hoping that those that are watching, I mean, this can be for your career, your relationships, your money. We talk about money here, but you know, what you're talking about, the unlearning process that brings about that change that you require. And for you to grow, by the way, because we unlearn and relearn new things so that we can move from where we are in order for us to grow. So if you want to grow, if you want to unlearn, Zanele's here. She's your lady. She's the unlearning lady. And this is the book that you can get for yourself. Where do they get the book?
So the book is available on our website, theunlearners.com/journal. So if they head directly to our website, they'll be able to get themselves a copy or 2 for their unlearning buddy who's going to hold them accountable, because that's important.
Yeah, your accountability partner. Very, very important. There you have it. And if you're a group of ladies and you want to have her come and help you walk this journey, please, by all means, do that. And with that, Zanele, thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming out and just sharing these nuggets with us. I can tell you, I'm working on my journal. Will you work on yours? And until the next episode, please share and like and subscribe, because somebody needs to hear today's conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you.